So I'm really enjoying the nice relaxed pace of life that we have in June at the moment, and it's a lovely cool day today as well, which is particularly enjoyable after quite a few really hot days. Anyway, I thought you might just like to have a little potter around the kitchen garden with me, and I'll show you some of the things that I've been up to. So I've just been planting in the back garden. I've just put some Cobra French beans in quite close together on the assumption that I can keep them, because they're in the back garden, really well watered and well fed. So hopefully, the ground, relatively small amount of ground, can support a lot of beans. But also just because this is the only space we've got for beans this year. We're not growing as many because we always find that we're kind of overwhelmed with them and we don't like them frozen. And this bed is spinach. And this half is Mikado, which is a tried and true excellent summer spinach. It's an Asian derived one, it doesn't tend to bolt in summer. And this one is a trial spinach from Jerry at growseed.co.uk, and I'm just giving this one a try to compare it to Mikado. This one is also meant to be a summer spinach that doesn't bolt. And I've also just down the end here put in some replacement alderman peas. Now alderman peas are really big, vigorous plants, so you don't need too many there. There's about 2 every 4 inches, which is actually quite a lot for peas, and they'll just be trained up in between string, just like these, which are sugar snap pea, and those which are mange tout pea. So I've firmed those in, just put them in small depressions, just so that it's a little bit easier to keep them well watered. Spinach that isn't well watered is also more likely to go to seed, which is the case with pretty much everything else as well. In this bed previously there was spring cabbage, and we've just finished harvesting the last one of those. And this is our current spinach bed, and it looks quite nice at the moment. I think this is Minopa. It's a low oxalic acid spinach, so it's quite sweet, looks quite lush and lovely, but it won't stay looking like that, unfortunately, because it's a spring spinach, and in the heat of summer it will pretty quickly go to seed. So I'll be lucky if I get 3 weeks harvest off this, and if I'm lucky, the bed that I've just planted in 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, will be ready for harvest. And we've discovered that our grandson loves oca leaves, and so we've popped some plants in here for him on the patio, where it's easy for him to come and pick them. They are high in oxalic acid, so you don't want to be eating like huge quantities of them, but just snacking on them is a really good idea. And we probably use some in the salad mixes as well, because they're a really zesty kind of lemony leaf, actually quite similar to the oca tubers themselves. But we normally grow our oca tubers in containers on the allotment, but they take up a lot of space and they don't give a huge yield, so the rest stuck in a corner out of the way. But we'll probably get a few tubers from here, probably enough for seed stock for next year, and hopefully loads of leaves. Now they will bush out into quite big plants, so they should take up most of this space underneath the cherry tree. So I've just been taking a look at the garlic, and it's thickening up really nicely. Hopefully you can see my comparison with my fingers, just how thick some of these stems are. I put it in quite densely actually, thinking I was going to harvest it as green garlic, but in the end we just left it because we had so much green garlic elsewhere. Green garlic is just immature garlic, and I interplanted it with these lovely North Holland blood red onions, which I'm going to harvest as spring onions, and now these are pretty big, so they're ready to harvest, and I'll just hopefully take those out without disturbing the garlic too much. But they're looking really nice. and the ones at the back are not quite so big because they've been shaded by the garlic, so I should get a nice successional harvest of those. And it's all shaping up quite nicely now in the kitchen garden. And this is my next succession of those same spring onions. You can just see the red now at the bottom there, and so they should be ready in 2 or 3 weeks, I should think. And these cans, they just keep the cats and the birds away. And originally they had the nets on them, well, the fleece rather, but obviously that's not needed now. Peas are coming along really well. This year I decided to plant my parsnips interplanted with main crop shallots, and I think it's going to work, but I've never tried it before. But the shallots are nice and big, and the parsnips are really tiny, so it'll take a long time before these parsnips need the whole of the bed, and by that time hopefully we'll be pulling the shallots out. I've just thinned these down to 2, and in a few weeks' time, once I'm sure that one of those 2 is well established and throwing up some good extra leaf growth, I'll thin them down to 1. My beds are all quite small, but they're quite intensely planted, so I've got 24 parsnips in there that should grow to a really good size, and about 100 shallots. And I've just started planting out my outdoor tomatoes, and I've put 2 in really small, so there's one here and there's one just over there. And the theory is that, the theory I'm testing is that small plants planted out at a really good time, so a time when it's really warm and mild nights and very little in the way of wind, might establish really well, and so be really well established by the time our June storms kind of arrive, which is generally early to mid-June, and so be better equipped to handle those storms than the bigger plants that I'm going to put out a few weeks later. Actually next week, so just a week later, but we'll see whether that week makes a difference. Certainly seems to have worked for these, which are Crimson Crush, and I planted these out a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago probably, and I just popped a bit of bubble wrap around them, and they've doubled in size in that time, in that bubble wrap, and the weather wasn't that great for that period, but the bubble wrap provided ample protection for them, and so they're really well established now and nicely hardened off, so I'm hoping that they're going to grow on really nicely. And they were just on canes. I'm actually going to move them over here so that they're better protected by this wall, and I'm going to tie those canes to that wire that you might be able to see running along the wall there, whereas the tumbler, which are just as the name suggests, they just tumble rather than are supported on canes. Those are going to go in those 30-litre containers once that green garlic's harvested at the weekend. So I hope you like that relaxed little video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.